Clara's hand shook violently as the heavy church doors swung open, and every head in the hall turned toward her. The sound of whispers filled the air like buzzing insects. Is that her? The one forced to marry a poor widower. So shameful. At the altar stood a man in a simple black suit, holding the hand of a small girl who looked no older than 6. The girl clutched a worn teddy bear tightly, her eyes scanning the crowd nervously. Clara stopped walking for a brief second. Her chest tightened. This was not a wedding. It felt like an execution. Her stepmother's voice echoed from earlier that morning. You will marry him today, Clara, or forget about your father's inheritance forever. Her stepbrother had smirked beside her. A broke single father with baggage is all you're worth anyway. Now, standing there in front of everyone, Clara understood the full cruelty of their plan. She was being thrown away. The man at the altar looked up at her calmly. No arrogance. No excitement. Just quiet patience, like he had already accepted this fate long before she arrived. Walk, her stepmother hissed from behind, pushing her slightly forward. Clara stumbled, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she slowly made her way down the aisle. Every step felt heavier than the last. A guest whispered loudly enough to be heard. She used to be from the richest family in the city. Look at her now. Another laughed softly. Married to a man with a child. That's her downgrade. Clara's eyes stung, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not for them. As she reached the altar, the man gently let go of his daughter's hand and stepped forward. Are you okay? He asked softly. His voice was calm. Too calm for someone in his position. Clara didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the little girl who was now hiding slightly behind his leg. The girl whispered, Daddy said you might not like us. Something in Clara's chest cracked. Before she could respond, the priest began the ceremony. I now pronounce you. Wait. The voice came from Clara. Everyone froze. Her stepmother's eyes widened in anger. Don't you dare.
I need a minute.
But Clara raised her hand slightly.
You don't want this, you can
I
still
need a
walk
minute.
away.
The hall erupted in murmurs. The man beside her finally turned fully toward her.
If you don't want this,
you can still walk away. That was the first time anyone had given her that option. Her breath hitched. Walk away? And lose everything her father left her? Hand it all over to people who destroyed her family from the inside. Her jaw tightened. She turned to the priest. Continue. A satisfied smile crossed her stepmother's face. If you are still watching this story unfold, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment where you are watching from. You don't want to miss what happens next because everything is about to change. The ceremony ended quickly. No celebration. No applause. Just silence and judgmental stares. As they stepped out of the church, a luxury car drove past slowly. Clara noticed her stepbrother watching her with disgust. Enjoy your new life, he said mockingly before getting into his car. Her stepmother leaned closer. You made the right choice. Stay there and don't embarrass us again. Then they left. Just like that. Clara stood there, still in her wedding dress, feeling like she had been erased from her own life. The man beside her adjusted his sleeves slightly. We should go, he said calmly. I don't even know your name, Clara replied coldly. Daniel. Simple. No title. No pride. The car they entered was not luxurious, just old but clean. Clara sat at the edge, keeping distance. The little girl sat between them quietly. Her name is Lily, Daniel said. Clara nodded slightly. The ride home was silent, except for Lily humming softly while holding her teddy bear. Clara stared out the window, her mind racing. How did her life reduce to this? From a mansion to a stranger's car. From inheritance to humiliation. From daughter of a legacy to stepmother's pawn. When they arrived, the house was modest. Small garden. Simple fence. Nothing like what she was used to. Clara stepped out slowly. This is it? She asked, unable to hide her disbelief. Daniel nodded. It's home. Home. The word felt foreign. Inside, the house was clean but minimal. No luxury. No staff. Just quiet simplicity. Clara dropped her bag on the sofa and turned to face him. Let's be clear, she said firmly. This marriage is nothing. I'm only here because I was forced. Don't expect anything from me. Daniel looked at her for a moment. Then he simply said, I don't expect anything from you. That response confused her more than angered her. From the corner, Lily spoke softly. Can I show you my drawings? Clara hesitated, then nodded slightly. The little girl ran off excitedly. Daniel watched Clara carefully. She doesn't talk much to strangers. I'm not staying long enough to matter, Clara replied. A silence followed. But something about Daniel's calmness unsettled her. It wasn't weakness. It felt like control. Like he was watching everything without reacting. Later that evening, Clara sat alone in the small room assigned to her. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. "This is your life now," she whispered bitterly. Suddenly, a knock came. Lily stood at the door holding a drawing. "It's for you," she said shyly. Clara took it. It was a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands. Under it, written in uneven handwriting, "Mom, Dad, and me." Clara froze. "I drew you as Mom," Lily said quietly, almost afraid. Clara's throat tightened. "I'm not your mom," she said softly. Lily looked down. "Okay." She turned to leave. Clara hesitated. For the first time, she didn't feel anger. She felt something worse. Guilt. "Wait," she said suddenly. Lily turned. Clara sighed. "It's the nice drawing." A small smile formed on Lily's face before she ran off. Clara sat down heavily on the bed, staring at the drawing again. Outside, Daniel stood by the hallway, watching quietly before walking away. And for the first time that night, Clara wondered something she didn't want to admit. Why did this poor man feel nothing like a poor man at all? Daniel left early the next morning before Clara even came out of her room. When she finally stepped into the living room, the house felt quieter than it should. Lily was sitting on the floor arranging crayons in color order. "Where is your father?" Clara asked casually, pouring herself a glass of water. "He went to work," Lily replied without looking up. Clara nodded slowly. "Of course. Work. Whatever that meant." She glanced around the small house again. It was too neat. Too controlled. Not what she expected from someone struggling financially. There were no signs of chaos. No unpaid bills lying around. No desperation. Just order. That same uneasy feeling from yesterday returned. Later that afternoon, Clara decided to step outside to clear her head. The neighborhood was simple, but peaceful. Children played outside. Neighbors greeted each other warmly. It felt normal. Too normal. As she walked down the street, she overheard 2 women talking near a kiosk. "That man that lives down that street. Daniel, he's strange." "The widower?" "Yes. He doesn't talk much. But have you noticed how people react when he passes?" Clara slowed her steps slightly. One of them lowered her voice. "My cousin works in a logistics company." She said her boss once stood up when Daniel entered a meeting room. The other woman laughed. "You're joking. That man. Poor single father. Exactly what everyone thinks," the first woman replied. "But people don't treat him like that behind closed doors." Clara's stomach tightened. She walked away quickly before they noticed her listening. Back at the house, Lily ran to her excitedly. "Mom." She stopped herself suddenly, remembering Clara's reaction before. "Clara, look." She held up another drawing. This one was different. It showed a big building, cars, and a man standing at the top. Clara frowned. "What is this?" "That's Daddy," Lily said proudly. "And this?" "That's his office." Clara laughed slightly. "Your father doesn't have an office like that." Lily tilted her head. "He does. I've seen it." Clara paused. "You've seen it?" Lily nodded. "Sometimes I go there after school with his driver." Clara blinked. "Driver?" Before she could ask anything else, the front door opened. Daniel stepped in. Clara turned sharply. "You have a driver?" Daniel looked at Lily briefly, then back at Clara. "Yes." That was it. No explanation. No hesitation. Clara crossed her arms. "You never mentioned that." "You never asked," he replied calmly. Something about his tone irritated her. "That's not normal," she said. "What isn't?" "This whole situation. The house. The driver. You acting like nothing bothers you." Daniel placed his bag down slowly. "Should something be bothering me?" Clara stepped closer. "You're a single father living like this, but people speak about you like you matter in ways you don't even acknowledge." For the first time, Daniel's expression shifted slightly. Not anger, just something unreadable. "You've been listening to people talk about me?" "I overheard them," Clara corrected quickly. A pause. Then Daniel said, "People talk a lot." "That's not an answer," she snapped. Lily quietly moved to the corner of the room, sensing tension. Clara lowered her voice. "Who are you really?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then simply said, "Someone trying to raise his daughter in peace." That answer only made her more frustrated. "You expect me to believe that's all?" Daniel sighed lightly, almost tired. "Clara, you're free to believe whatever you want." Her name sounded too familiar in his voice, like he had said it many times before in different contexts. Before she could press further, his phone rang. He glanced at it, then stepped outside to answer. Clara stood still, watching him leave. Lily walked up beside her quietly. Daddy doesn't like talking about work. What kind of work does he do? Clara asked. Lily smiled. Important work. Clara stared at her. That doesn't explain anything. Lily shrugged innocently. He helps a lot of people. Clara sighed and sat down. Something wasn't adding up. If you're still following this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. The truth about Daniel is getting closer, but not in the way you expect. Later that night, Clara woke up to the sound of a car outside. She slowly got up and walked to the window. A sleek black vehicle had parked quietly outside the house. Two men stepped out, dressed in formal suits. They stood respectfully as Daniel approached them. Clara watched closely. One of the men bowed slightly and handed Daniel a folder. Daniel signed something quickly, then spoke briefly before they left. No shouting. No urgency. Just quiet authority. Clara's heart started beating faster. What is going on? She whispered. The next morning, she confronted him immediately. I saw them, she said. Daniel was making coffee. Saw who? The men in suits. He didn't turn around. Oh, that's it. Just oh. Daniel placed the cup down and faced her. They were handling something for me. Clara narrowed her eyes. What kind of something? A company matter. Clara laughed sharply. So you do have companies now? Daniel looked at her calmly. I didn't say I didn't. That silence hit differently. Clara felt her frustration turn into something else. Suspicion. You're hiding something, she said. Daniel took a sip of his coffee. Most people are. That's not the same, isn't it? Clara stepped closer. If you're lying about who you are. I'm not lying, he interrupted gently. A pause. Then he added, you're just assuming. Clara hated how calm he was. It made her feel like she was the one losing control. Later that day, she decided to call her stepbrother. Jason answered almost immediately. Well, look who remembered her real family, he said sarcastically. I need to ask you something, Clara said. About your poor husband? Clara clenched her jaw. Yes. Jason laughed. What about him? Still living in misery. Clara hesitated. Do you know anything about him? Anything unusual? Another laugh. Clara, the man is a broke widower. Stop overthinking your downgrade. But Clara didn't respond. Because she knew. Something about Daniel was not normal. And she was about to find out exactly what it was. Clara ended the call without saying goodbye. Jason's voice still echoed in her mind like an insult she couldn't wash off. A broke widower. Stop overthinking your downgrade. She looked around the quiet room, and for the first time since the wedding, she didn't feel anger. She felt doubt. Real doubt. That night, Daniel returned home later than usual. Lily was already asleep on the couch, hugging her teddy bear. Clara sat by the dining table pretending to scroll through her phone, but her eyes kept drifting toward him. Daniel loosened his sleeves and noticed her gaze. You're still awake, he said calmly. I was waiting, she replied. For what? Clara stood slowly. For you to stop pretending. Daniel paused slightly, then closed the door behind him. I'm not pretending anything. Clara walked closer, her voice firm. People don't treat you the way they treat you if you're just a poor man. Daniel looked at Lily briefly, then back at her. And how exactly do they treat me? Clara stepped closer. Like someone important. A silence followed. Daniel exhaled slowly, as if weighing something. Clara, he said quietly, importance is relative. That's not an answer, she snapped. It is, he replied. Clara shook her head. I saw men in suits bowing to you. I saw documents being signed. I heard people talking about you like you control things you shouldn't even have access to. Daniel remained calm. You're observing, not understanding. Clara's frustration broke. Then explain it to me. For the first time, Daniel's expression hardened slightly. Not anger, but seriousness. Some explanations change everything, he said. Clara froze. That sounds like a threat. It's not, he replied. It's a warning. The room went silent except for Lily's soft breathing from the couch. Clara lowered her voice. Who are you, Daniel? He looked at her for a long moment. Then simply said, someone your family once tried very hard to destroy. Clara's heart skipped. What are you talking about? Daniel walked past her slowly, pouring himself a glass of water. You think your stepmother found me by accident? Clara turned sharply. What are you saying? He took a sip before answering. This marriage wasn't random. Clara felt her stomach drop. No, that's not possible. Daniel looked at her directly. Your stepmother needed you removed from your inheritance path. I was chosen because I wouldn't be questioned. Clara's voice trembled. That doesn't make sense. It does, he said calmly. To people like her. Clara stepped back slightly. So you're saying you agreed to this because of them? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Then he said, I agreed because I wanted access. Clara frowned. Access to what? Before he could respond, Lily stirred slightly on the couch. Daniel immediately softened his tone. Not here. Clara followed his gaze. Then when? Daniel looked back at her. Soon. If you've watched this far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Because what you're about to hear next changes everything about Daniel's identity. The next morning, Clara woke up to chaos outside. Multiple cars were parked along the street. Not ordinary cars. Expensive ones. Men in formal suits stood outside the house, waiting silently. Clara rushed out. Who are you people? She demanded. None of them answered her. Instead, they all stepped aside as Daniel walked out of the house. Dressed differently. Not casual anymore. Sharp suit. Clean presence. Completely different energy. Clara stared at him. This is not you, she said. Daniel adjusted his cufflinks calmly. This is also me. One of the men handed him a tablet. Another opened a car door respectfully. Clara stepped forward. Stop. Explain what is happening right now. Daniel looked at her for a moment, then said, You're about to see why your family picked me. Before she could respond, he entered the car. Clara hesitated, then followed him without thinking. Inside the car, silence was heavy. Finally, she spoke. You've been lying to me. Daniel didn't look at her. No. You're rich. A pause. Then he said, Yes. Clara blinked. What? He finally turned to her. I never said I wasn't. Her heart pounded. So all this time the house, Lily, everything, is real, he said. Just not what you assumed. Clara leaned forward. Why hide it? Daniel's voice softened slightly. Because people don't love truth. They love benefit. Clara stared at him. That doesn't answer anything. He looked out the window. You'll understand soon. The car stopped in front of a massive building. Clara stepped out slowly. Her breath caught. It wasn't just an office. It was a corporate tower. Security bowed as Daniel walked in. Staff stood respectfully. Executives followed him with urgency. Clara's legs almost gave out. This is yours, she whispered. Daniel nodded. One of the executives approached. Sir, the board is ready. They've been waiting for your approval. Clara turned to him sharply. Sir. The executive looked confused seeing her. Daniel gestured slightly. Let's proceed. Clara grabbed his arm. Daniel. He stopped. She lowered her voice. My stepmother. She arranged this marriage to humiliate me. Daniel looked at her calmly. I know. Her eyes widened. And you still went along with it? A pause. Then he said, Because I needed to see who you were without your family's protection. Clara's voice cracked. So this was a test. Daniel didn't deny it. Clara stepped back slowly. You used me. His expression softened slightly. I gave you truth. That's not the same. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, No. But it led you here. Clara shook her head, overwhelmed. This is insane. Daniel turned toward the building. Come inside, he said. Clara didn't move. Then he added, Because what I'm about to show you is the reason your family will regret ever touching mine. Clara froze. Your family? Daniel looked at her once more. And for the first time, his calm voice carried something sharper. Yes, he said. Mine. And that was when Clara realized. This wasn't just a forced marriage. It was a setup. And her family was already inside a game they didn't even understand.